Join us for a transformative conversation with Monique Hill, a profound spiritual guide, astrologer, and numerologist. Discover the power of self-discovery, healing, and manifestation as Monique shares her personal journey and insights into the spiritual world. You're going to learn how to embrace your individuality and break free from societal expectations, harness the power of energy and vibration to create your desired reality, heal your mind, your body, your soul through meditation, mindfulness, and creative expression, and connect with your spiritual self and find inner peace. Don't miss this opportunity to gain valuable insights and inspiration. So tune in now to Beyond the Mainstream, the power of energy healing, and discover your true potential.
I was born in Sydney, Australia, and at the moment I'm living in Coffs Harbour, which is the east coast of Australia. So that's about 300 kilometres south of Brisbane, right, which is a capital city of Queensland. And then I'm, I think, about 500 kilometres north of Sydney, which isn't the capital, but everybody thinks it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've sort of grown up on this east coast, and I've been back and forth from Sydney. You know, I've been in the spiritual, and we were talking sales too earlier on the call, for a very long time. I think I started off my first marketing business at 16, and I was going door to door. So that was before the internet. Yes, I'm giving away my age. That was way before the internet. So I have had a sales background. I come from a family that had small businesses, and from whenever I can remember, I mean, we all were taught that we had to answer the phone properly and state our business name and hello, Monique speaking, and all of that sort of thing. So I've had to work in family businesses, and that's been my life, has been businesses, different businesses. So, you know, I've worked in other people's businesses as well. So I've got a great big business ethic. But nowadays, you know, for me to be in business, I've really got to believe in the product. So I've been an astrologer and numerologist for 40 years. So that's my personal business. And I've done my Cert 4 in life coaching. And I've also done my, done a 12 months Bible college. Okay. And I came out of that into counselling and teaching. Yeah. So lots of different things that I've done, which was my nature. And now apparently that's the thing to do. When I was growing up and leaving school, it was, you know, people, even my family would look at me and say, well, are you going to do something else now? And you're doing something else, are you? Because back in the day, you've got a job, you stayed in the job forever. And that's not the case today. You know, I think all of the different experiences that I've had have given me so much more life experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I would have grown up the same. So you just watch your parents in the one job their whole life, even though they don't like it. But I have changed careers and quite a lot, and it actually became a bit of a limiting belief for me whenever I came here, because I had initially decided that I was just going to live the rest of my life in Australia as an artist. And then after a near-death experience last year, it just pulled me back into the world of coaching, because I was an art therapist and a coach from about 2016. And I had burnt out. So I was like, yeah, nah, can't be bothered. But I just felt the pull so much to get back into it. And it was at that point where I was like, oh, you're going to switch again, Claire? What are people going to think? And it's like, you have to let that go. And thankfully, you have now said that it's the done thing. I feel so much better.
Yeah, apparently it is. I mean, you know, with the millennials and, you know,
I'm an old millennial. I just about got there.
You just make it in the 80s, do you? Yeah. So, you know, I mean, all those experiences. But really, the reason I did it is because, number one, I couldn't see myself sitting in an office 9 to 5.
Yeah.
In my 20s, I did go into a sales position in an office. And I did really well. However, it only lasted probably 3 or 4 years, and that money I went off to India with. So, you know, I think that creativity that you said, you know, you wanted to come to Australia and be a creative. Well, you know, I started on stage as a singer and a dancer and all that sort of thing. And, you know, back in the day, it was, oh, you can't get, that won't pay any money. You can't have that sort of a job. You've got to get a normal job, you know, whatever normal is, you know, and that art and all that, oh, that won't pay any money. But I think I really believed in myself. So the best job that I could get leaving school was in hospitality. And that's right up my alley because it's service, it's serving other people. And I was really passionate about, you know, being very classy. And I ended up at the Regent Hotel in Sydney, and it was the #1 hotel in Australia at the time, down at the Rocks, you know. So I was taught by the French, and wow, you know, to bring that sort of standard of service. I mean, it's all gone downhill now, right? Because I think it's because of the telephones, you know, the Geno after the millennials, Gen Z, you know, having telephones, it seems that they're a little bit harder at reading other people's needs and body languages and communicating. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing towards them. It's just the way that society is and how they've grown up. Because I've observed them and I've had to manage them because I've stepped back into hospitality in the last 2 years. And that was mainly because I was working from home and I did want to get out and about. So I went to a yacht club, you know, I'm a sailor. So, yeah, so I worked at the yacht club. But what that meant was having all the experience that I have. Okay, you're the boss then, you know, so you get the responsibility. And I found it very difficult working with Gen Z because they didn't have that gift of service, and just things have changed so much. Yeah, they couldn't read somebody wanting something with their eyes, you know, from that table over there without having to stand up and wave their hands around, you know. And I think the communication, I think, you know, and I feel sorry for them because they've had the phones. You know, when the elderly people would talk to them and want to make a joke with them and what have you, they're quite uncomfortable. And you know, it's sort of not being able to keep that communication going. So it's a bit sad, really, in the service industry. But I wondered, okay, well, what's going to happen to the hospitality industry? And then I found out the other day, I thought, well, if these guys aren't going to carry it on, I'm certainly not going to be running around a restaurant at 70, 80. It's robotics. They've already started. Robotics will be bringing you your meals. You know, whether you like that or not, that's what's going to happen.
Wow.
I know.
That just reminds me of, you know, the sushi restaurants with the little...
The train.
Yeah, I like the connection. Yeah. I like the connection that you get. But to be fair to Gen Zs, I'd be terrible in a service industry like a restaurant because I'm not great at that either.
You're not?
No, and I think my just intense anxiety, I think it's because my mum worked in the service industry and told me a couple of horror stories. Like whenever she was first starting out, she brought like a tray of drinks out and poured them over absolutely everybody at the table. And I was like, that I would do that. I would absolutely do that. So I would be terrified of that. But what is your main focus whenever it comes to business at the minute? What is it that you're actually offering clients?
Well, I don't think I'll be looking for anything else into my future because I've done so many different things and studied all the courses that you can in the spiritual industry, I guess you could call it that. So now, you know, I cannot let go of my astrology and numerology knowledge and experience. And yes, I call it astrology and numerology, but really it's energy reading. You know, when you study something for 40 years, it's really heightened my intuition. And I've only got to sort of know, you know, when you're born, and I can pretty much, well, I can read what type of energy you will attract and project. So that's been a gift because everything is energy on this planet. And the way the tides and all sorts and the weather and everything works is all got to do with our solar system. You know, and we were discussing happy new moon to everybody because at 12 o'clock here in Australia time, half an hour before we started, the new moon in Virgo broke. There's two thoughts with astrology. There's the tropical astrology, which is, sort of what I teach and do readings with. And then we have the Vedic astrology, which is the moon calendar, which India and the Eastern cultures, right? And that's a little bit deeper. You've got to probably know a little bit about astrology or higher-minded thinker to use the Vedic astrology. Yeah. So there's sort of two systems. Okay. But on my channel on YouTube, I'm speaking about the tropical, which is mundane. It's more the mundane living on Earth. Okay. With the Vedic is a little higher minded, so you've got to sort of be a little more open-minded, a little bit more aware of energy when dealing with the Vedic chart. And numerology. The two of them went hand in hand. And the reason I got into that at 17 years of age was because we didn't have a counselling system here in Australia. So there wasn't really the services that are around now, no mental health services, none of that. I think if anything, there was psychiatrists. And, you really had to have pretty big mental issues to see a psychiatrist because they were also allowed to give drugs as well, whereas psychologists aren't, counsellors aren't, that sort of thing. So I got into astrology because I really wanted to understand, God, what was going on with my life, because I was an early awakener. And everybody was just on this treadmill, and you get that job we were talking about, and you buy a house and you get married, and that's it. You should be happy with all of that. Well, that wasn't me at all. I was dancing to the beat of my own drum, and I was called Monique, which I never liked because that made me feel different, and nobody wanted to feel different back then because that meant you don't fit.
Even now, the same.
Oh, no, I think it's great to be unique and to be different. And
I agree with that.
Back in your
I think uniqueness is fantastic, and those who can embrace their uniqueness, usually adults, but people still want to be part of a tribe and part of a community. And even us, we are part of the spiritual community and the higher minded community, and it's easier to explore different modalities, obviously, whenever you're not being blocked by any kind of negative logical energy, which is it's in the real world is quite difficult.
The mainstream, mainstream, they sort of call it. But I was so excited about the LGBT movement because what that brought, as far as I was concerned, as far as what I could see, forget the sexual connotation of it, but it really sort of brought out into society that there are differences and that we can embrace those differences. And I don't want to get political about all of that. And I'm not really interested in what's going on at schools because it's been a long time since I was associated with the school and education department. But, as an astrologer, as of yesterday, the day before, Pluto, it ingressed back into Capricorn. Now, that energy's been going on for 16 years. And if you look back at the changes that we've had in the last 16 years, that has all had to do with Pluto in Capricorn. And that has been dismantling the old patriarchy structures. Okay, so they've actually dismantled. Really, there's only people holding them up. That's why we have issues in politics, those structures, our health system, in Australia, where that has changed so much, the health system, governments, people are not believing in the government the way that they used to. All these structures that have become archaic, have been transformed in the last 16 years. So we've got until November, and then what happens is Pluto will ingress into Aquarian energy. And the Aquarian energy is the individuation right?
Okay.
The individual, right? All Aquarians you meet, they pride themselves on being individuals, all right?
Okay.
And the Aquarian energy also covers the collective, all of us as a family together, all the humans together, the
Okay.
collective. So for the next 20 years, this is what's going to be changing, So, getting back to that uniqueness, individuation is going to become very, very important. So, yes, we do want, a group. We do want to feel a part of a group. However, we need to be accepted as an individual in that group, not like this is our group, you've got to have blue shirts because we're all wearing blue shirts.
Yeah.
Bring your coloured shirts. Everybody's a different colour, but we're all one. And once that consciousness drops for all of humanity, then wow, I'm not going to say peace on earth will reign. However, if we can have that consciousness and awareness that we are all one, and that's scientific, we all move. I mean, you only had to look at the shutdowns and what have you, that was not going to escape anybody, even though a few tried. It's like, this is where we're headed, and it's fabulous. It's the evolution of humanity, because we can all have a look out there and go, right, we're like one big family, brothers and sisters, and take a leaf out of the First Nations people who, that's it. Hey, bro, hey, sister, whether you're born from a different mother, it's having that respect. I'm not going to go all the way and say you have to love everybody, but having the respect for every individual on this planet. And we are a collective of individuals. So moving forward, that is astrologically the energy, that we find our individuality and own it, own that uniqueness of ourselves. And I think the LGBT younger people, so they really stand up for that, and I love that. I love that.
Me too.
I love
fully
that.
support that.
And racism, they're very aware of racism. The Gen Zs and what are they called? The ones born in the 2000s. These young ones nowadays. If you've got children, my oh my God, my grandfather was so racist. He'd been in the war with the Japanese and what have you. And I actually remember watching him watch the news, yelling at the TV and calling these people names. And I still remember it to this day, the racism that I grew up with. So much has changed in my 5 decades of living. And that's, the astrology is sort of bringing that energy on board. Yeah.
Wow. Well, as a manifestation coach, which is myself, I often talk about aligning our energies with intentions. How do you see astrology aligning with the principles of manifestation?
Well, really, it's all happens anyway. Like I know, as a life coach, manifestation, I was actually one of the first 100 people to receive the DVD, The Secret, in the world. Okay, I just happened to be around that industry at that time on the Gold Coast, and I was in the first 100. Now that DVD starred Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks. You've heard, they're all about manifestation, what have you. Now, the mainstream, Channel 9, the producers, actually wouldn't release that DVD to the rest of the world because it was too far out. Their viewers on Channel 9 TV, they wouldn't cope with channeling. Now, what's that? That's 20 years ago only. 20 years ago only. And now look what's out there now.
Yeah.
And the mainstream are all getting on board. And the young people, okay, here's an example. When I started studying astrology, I didn't know anybody else that studied astrology until the internet. Okay. So I would go to news agents. If you're not in Australia, that's where they sell magazines and papers and lottery tickets. Um, they would have books.
Mm-hmm.
I would go to the library and try and get books and what have you. And if I was out at the way that you learn astrology is through people. You're
Mm-hmm.
asking them their birthday, and then you're studying, and then you see it teaches you
Yeah.
to the point where now my intuition, usually I give myself 3 guesses, I can pick up on people's energy.
Mm-hmm.
And people used to bag me out at party. Oh, that's a load of BS. And they get really angry. Like, it really had triggered them, that I was into this sort of new age, they called it back then.
Yeah.
Whereas now, okay, on TikTok and all of that, I mean, they're all talking astrology. I can be out at a shop. I can be at the bakery. I can be at a bar or a restaurant, and I can hear young people talking about astrology. Oh, what's on you? And what's on you? And what's on you? It's become mainstream now. I
Yeah.
mean, it is becoming mainstream. Because I'm also a healer. I'm a hands-on healer. And I can't get away from that industry because I'm so good. And I've got great local clients here. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that I really am helping them. They're mainstream people as well, right? So I'm raising energy just through my hands, my energetics. Um, and I speak who I am. I don't hide that information. And
Mm-hmm.
I've got Buddhas all through here, and they're not into that sort of stuff. However, people have become a lot more open.
Mm-hmm.
So it is manifesting astrology, numerology. It's all about the expansion of the mind. And that
Yeah.
is the other area that I work with, Claire, is expansion of the mind. And I've affiliated with another company called Skillful Mind that's
Okay.
been around for, over 10 years.
Okay.
And the founder of that company, Peter Radcliffe, he was an ordained monk, Thai monk. And he, spent years under, the lineage, a Thai lineage. And then on his own, he went into isolation for 9 months and meditated 10 hours a day. So to me, that's someone who's done the work.
Yeah.
That's someone who's quietened the ego, okay, if not become enlightened. I mean, it's not something that he would tell you, but in my
Mm-hmm.
mind, in my observation of him for 4 years, he's enlightened.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing triggers him, nothing upsets him. And that's what an enlightened person is all about, taking it moment for moment, and the ego. We always have an ego, but the ego doesn't sort of rule his day or what have you. There's
Yeah.
no striving. So to become enlightened, the craving stops. The
Mm-hmm.
ego stops craving for money, food, addictions, whatever. It's just happy to be in the moment to see what comes, which brings me back to your question. That the manifestation happens. For us to change, really, yes, we can study and we can gain more knowledge. However, it's going to happen anyway. Our evolution as each individual is going to unfold,
Mm-hmm.
as it will. This planet, what goes on this planet, it will unfold. Okay, but what I do believe, the awareness and open-mindedness and the consciousness of each individual will have the flavour of which direction we go.
Yeah. I
As
think
we've seen.
manifestation, just as you were talking about the secret coming into the mainstream, I think that the advancement of quantum physics has helped a lot of mainstream come into the spiritual world. It certainly helped me come through the door. And I think it's just fascinating. And if you can open any kind of a door for the mainstream to open their minds and to come through and to explore the different modalities that are available for healing, for manifestation, whatever it is, I think just having that openness, just opening your crown, allowing things to come in. And if it's not for you, it's not for you, but at least you tried and you did it with love and acceptance and joy. So
Mm.
you are known for your work both in healing and in the creative industries as well. So
Yeah.
how do you integrate the healing arts with the practice of maybe manifesting a desired reality, or what is your outcome whenever
It's
you're
all
doing that?
about joy. It's all about joy. Like I said, once the ego dies, okay, and we're not needing to grab onto things to make ourselves feel good,
Yeah.
then it is like what the coaching manifest industry says, the secret says, do what feels good.
Hmm.
Um, I think we discussed it beforehand. I sing again now.
Hmm.
Even though I was a professional singer, got paid to do it every weekend. Um, when I was doing the deep, deep shadow work of the last dozen years,
Hmm.
that all stopped because that would have kept me busy and it would have kept my ego active. Okay.
Yeah.
So coming out of that dark night of the soul, I took the first opportunity I could to start singing again. And I
Great.
travel you know, an hour down the coast and an hour back every Wednesday evening so I can sing. And
Brilliant.
I get back in that car and I am so full of joy, high as a kite, and there's no audience there, there's no ego payment whatsoever.
Hmm.
It raises the frequency of my vibration. Okay.
Yeah.
So in that dark night, I spent 2 years daily meditation on clearing those chakras with
Hmm.
guided meditations, of high
Hmm.
frequency, not just random, because anyone can make a meditation track.
Yes.
You really do have to have your intuition. It's got, yes, your intuition, but also what connects with you,
Hmm.
because we're all a different frequency. And this, you said it, with the physics. So see, that's big time quantum physics, and it's going to take. I mean, I try not to let my brain go there. Do you know what I mean? I believe it. I know it.
Hmm.
I know it, and I know that this brain can't quantify quantum physics,
Yeah.
and the way that I think we could all sort of go down that track is to understand that we're living all of these lives in now time.
Yeah.
That's when you go, what? Well, you can't understand because you're not meant to understand it. Okay.
Yeah.
So my in 2008, I went to India 3 times.
Hmm.
Now, I was taking my son because I'd been there once before, right, for 6 months when I was 30. And always, when I had my son, I thought, right, I'm going to take my son to India. And I had the Lonely Planet there, and I was looking with my highlighter at what we were going to do in the 3 weeks, okay?
Hmm.
Now, I had this energy come onto me and take my hand and put it on this spot on the map in the front of the Lonely Planet book.
Hmm.
And I'd never heard of that place before. So I opened up the book and looked at it. It was called Ajanta Allura. Okay. It was 3 days travel for us to get there. But intuitively, I was told by my guide, you must go there. You must go there. So it took 3 days. There were no Caucasian people there whatsoever, all Indian villages and what have you. And I took him up there. 3 days it took us to get there on buses and trains. When we got there, and I knew from the pictures, I had been there before. I
Hmm.
had meditated in these caves. They'd been taken for thousands and thousands of years by monks, the Jains. Um, they were dug into the rock. They
Hmm.
weren't unearthed until the 1950s. So
Hmm.
they were all overgrown. And then an explorer came across them. And in the land, my son was out in the dirt, and the guy was sowing with the cattle and everything, pulling big crystals out of the ground. So I've been there twice. Okay. So
Hmm.
to me, that's quantum physics. And when I walked into these caves, and it's where the big sleeping Buddha is, like
Hmm.
he's huge, he just goes on and on and on, and he's all gold. And I walked in the first time and I fell to the ground crying. And the
Wow.
tourist operator got everybody out of the caves and locked me in there and made them all stand outside. I mean, what is that? I never said anything. They spoke Indian, like another Indian dialect, and I was
Yeah.
just crying my eyes out. And
Wow.
we were allowed to go past the barriers and what have you, And I've been there twice, and I really feel I'm going to go back there again.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually read that underneath where no one's allowed to go, there's actually a UFO ship that's been
Wow.
stashed down there. I mean, I knew the cave that I'd spent a whole lifetime in, but this is quantum, so it's all going on, in the same time frame,
Mm-hmm.
just different timeline. So
Yes.
when we can have these experiences, and I love these sort of experiences, and that's just one. I could
Mm-hmm.
name many, many trippy experiences, we used to call them, decades, and all had this trippy experience, but that's got to become normal. That needs to come into the mainstream. And it's interesting how many of the mainstream are awakening to this. My
Mm-hmm.
client yesterday, she said, "What's this big whiteboard for?" Because first time with me, I said, "Well, I'm a YouTuber, and I put all my info up there, and boom, there it is in front of me when I do my YouTube." And
Yeah.
she goes, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm an astrologer." She goes, "Oh, I believe in that. I believe in that sort of stuff." She goes, "I tell the kids I can read people's energy, and she has had no knowledge, no anything,
Mm-hmm.
So this is also the energy that we're coming into, the manifestation of the awakening of humanity,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Whenever that lady said that she could read people's energy, how does she say how?
Yes, she said she can walk into the room and she can read that one and know what's going on with that person's life and and the kids she goes, my kids say to me, how do you know, Mum? How do you know? And that's just something, and she's hitting mid-50s.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day when religion had such a stronghold over society,
Yeah.
oh no, I mean, there's a lot of Christians don't agree with astrology because there's a small bit in the Bible that wasn't taken out that refers to astrology.
Okay.
And they are told in their churches by their pastors that it's devil worshipping and satanic and what have you. But I've done my research, and I mean, I went to Bible college,
Mm-hmm.
and I was ordained, and if you go back and look in the history, thank God for the internet, you can go back and you can see the books were put together by the high priests, spoken in Latin, so the people didn't have the knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
because that would have expanded their minds.
Yeah.
And we can't have everybody thinking for themselves, So
Yeah.
really, there's a place for religion, and I've enjoyed my experience. I read the Bible at 7 years of age. I love spirit, the energy of spirit. I love, however, man cannot take control. Man
Mm-hmm.
cannot be in control. One man, two men, three men. There's no control. This control structure has to fall away, and we
Mm-hmm.
have to come together as a group. And so there is astrology in the Bible. There is a time to sow. There is a time to reap. There is a time for this. There's a time for that, a time for this. And that's astrology. And that's what astrologers know, that when they do charts with people, they can tell you when the best, all right, the energy is coming in for you to do this. Okay, the energy is coming in that you probably need to do some shadow work. Oh, great travel energy coming in. Oh, you should start a business. This energy is really favorable. Oh, there's love coming in, love energy. Children, it's all there. Every part of life, all the energies are written in our blueprint, we call it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I believe that every human was born, their soul has a trajectory to get from one energy space to another.
Mm-hmm.
And along the way, there's many parts.
Yeah.
But the vibrational energy will draw them as well as an individual being drawn. And so that's happening for the collective, the manifestation and the awakening. It's not just random. You know, it's not random. I remember when I first started astrology, I picked up a magazine. I might have been in my early 20s. Yeah, early 20s. It was the early 90s. And this article was about the precession of the equinoxes. And these take about 2,500 years, these precessions, and we're coming into the age of Aquarius. So the new precession of energy. And the age of Pisces was when Jesus Christ heralded in the age of Pisces. And that age was of compassion, the age of compassion. So now coming into the age of Aquarius, it's the age of individuality and owning who you are and not having to fit into somebody else's box, or because it's usually through control when people want you to fit into you know, their control.
You just said something that hit me like a sonic boom in the chest. It was the psalm that you were reciting, was the psalm that I read at my grandmother's funeral just before I came here. So, that love energy is just right in the chest. Oh, there's a trippy experience for you.
Yeah.
There you go.
I love you. And really, I think your grandmother is actually here. Okay, because I'm very aware of that. If you're going to go down into quantum physics, you have to understand that that energy is a thought away, right?
Yep.
And a smell away. Sometimes I smell roses, and there's no roses 4 floors up where I live up here. We're not growing any in this place, but you know, once we can open our minds, this is the biggest thing, you know, the most important thing. Everything is possible.
Yeah.
Everything is possible. You know, I'm still trying to answer your question of manifestation. So I keep, you know, wanting to come back to that, because it is a matter of when everything is possible and the mind isn't hasn't got these structures. No, that's not true. No, that's not true. You know, an open-minded person is a free person.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I love Abraham Hicks. That's kind of how I fell into the whole manifestation world. Sorry, Esther Hicks channeling Abraham Hicks. And it took me a while to get my head around it as well, just because I came from the, the psychology, the analytical background, and still kind of part of the mainstream, that being doubtful. And I was meditating, so I was taking baby steps, but it took a while for me to fully embrace it. But it's already here. I just always remember that it's already here. And if you are familiar and accept the many worlds theory, you're like, yes, it's here. It's done. It is done. It has happened. My manifestation is here. It's just on a different timeline. And just trust in the divine timing that whatever's going on for you now, it's happening for you, not to you. And it's ready when you're ready, basically.
Lovely. I'm glad you said that, because that is the truth. So if each individual, right, once we become our individual self, then if there's a desire, not a craving, but if there's a desire within you, if we can trust ourselves, well, I wouldn't be thinking that if it wasn't for me. I'd be thinking something else. Every different person, every individual on this planet has a desire. You ask this as a coach, if you had all the money in the world and all the time in the world, what would you do? And there's your answer. Okay, we know that as coaches. And so if you can understand that if you have that desire, well, it is yours, because why would you be desiring that when there's so many things that you could desire on this planet?
Yeah.
All right. But then as you go along on your personal development, spiritual journey, that gets unpacked so that the actual intention of the desire becomes very clear. And as a coach and a manifestation coach, I went and was on the front row of Esther Hicks, her show on the Gold Coast in 2003 or 2004. I can't remember. And my intention was to be called, and it wasn't, but it didn't matter. I had front row seats, and there was Esther. but even now I tend not even to listen to Esther. I mean, there's another channel, what's his, Cryon,
Okay.
beautiful channel as well. And he brings that multidimensional aspect, the multi-dimension, like it's all going on. And so bottom line, for mainstream, start with keep having your mind open, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And if you think you do know well, your ego's out of control. And I don't mind to tell you that. I'm a tough little Capricorn, I'll tell you that,
Yeah.
And I choose not to hang with egos, because
Yeah.
they're quite limiting and they're no fun at all. And by nature, I hate being controlled. That's why I didn't go into mainstream employment, is because it was so controlling,
Yeah.
and
So limiting.
I went to a Catholic boarding school, so run by nuns. I mean, my parents were hardcore disciplinaries. My nature was never going to be controlled. I've never married, because the paradigm of marriage just was not ready for me. And I have had violent relationships because males couldn't yet have the consciousness and awareness for freedom for each partner in a relationship to be free. That old paradigm of the man's the boss and he runs the woman's life and you come into alignment under him. And I mean, that comes from the Bible. That was a form of control that was written into the Bible, that the male was the only one that could talk to God. So therefore the female had to come into alignment because the male was the only one that heard from God. Oh, well, I've heard from God, now I can tell my wife and the rest of them. And then, I mean, madness of this now, to look back on the way that humanity lived. And this is all in my lifetime, and I don't look very old, people, do I? The changes that have happened in my I'm 59 in January. So the changes have just been amazing. And I think you get younger looking as you get less structured in the mind. As you get more open-minded, the body changes. You can actually change the cells of your body because of it.
Yeah, that's true. And just in case anybody doubts that, I have said this in another video, but stress, like chronic stress, changes you at a cellular level in terms of your DNA. So the opposite is true. So let's go for Monique's diet of looking younger by opening our minds.
Yeah, because it is the mind. It is the mind that does that, and it is stress. When I was in the dark night of the soul and I was releasing all of the shadows from my ancestry and the wounding, right? Because I was very good at shutting down pain. The wounding, oh my God, I've got pictures. I've actually kept chronicles of pictures, and I look like I was on death's door. So if you want to, have that reverse aging, you wake up every day, and coaches and manifestation coaches will tell you wake up every day and go, right, let's get into it. I love life, and exercising, that's another thing, getting involved in your community. I just don't feel old. There's so much I want to do in life, the same as there was so much I wanted to do when I left school at 16. I haven't even started really what I wanted to do. It's sort of taken me this long to get that confidence and belief that I can. And now that the rest of people are catching up with me, because I was out there in a lonely boat out there with all these beliefs and ideas and awarenesses, and there wasn't many around me. They used to call me names in friend groups and family. Oh, she's loopy, and she's woo woo, and she's up there. Oh my God, it was rejection. There was a real rejection about my uniqueness. And I'm sure others felt that way, and the LGBT, they feel that way too. But the more that we embrace our individuality, the more accepted we will be, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody else that's suffering because of their differences.
Yeah. It's
And that's a message.
learning to accept who you are can be such an unfolding journey in itself, like depending on your background and the way you were raised. Some people who were born into kind of chaotic backgrounds where maybe a parent wasn't able to function as a parent should, and the child was constantly walking on eggshells. Like, I
Trauma.
don't know who you want me to be. So they kept trying to fit into all these different molds. So it can take decades for you to actually figure out who you are. And it is so fantastic that you yourself have gotten to a point where it's like, yeah, fuck it. I am me, love me,
Mm.
accept me. I've accepted me. And if you don't, bye you know?
Yeah, and something that has surprised me is
Hmm.
I don't have loneliness anymore. Now, I've never married, you know, and I don't have a gang of friends like young people do. You go to this one's house and all. I don't have energy for that anyway. But I really, there could be nobody else in the world, and I'd still potter along happily.
Yeah,
You know,
me
and
too.
that is such a freedom to get to that place where, because many people my age, they may have married and busted up with their partners, right? I
Hmm.
mean, this is very common. And I'd
Yeah,
like to say over 50% of marriages,
yeah.
because when I was getting married, that's when the stats were going up as far as divorce and what have you goes. Um, Myself at school, there wasn't too many parents that were split up. But then from my generation onwards, yeah, yeah. And my son going through school, a lot of people only had one parent. One of the kids only had one parent and what have
Hmm.
you. So
Yeah.
there's all these people my age out there that are isolated,
Hmm.
okay? And so there's a big loneliness epidemic going
Yeah.
on. So that's sad. That's really sad. And I have felt that loneliness for sure, but it was when I was in that dark night.
Hmm.
Because all the abandonment issues had come up, like what you said, because I came from a traumatic childhood. And that trauma needs to be dealt with, owned, looked
Hmm.
at, not shoved under the carpet like we were told. I'll get over it. You'll be right. You
Hmm.
know, I've done all of that work, and I know people my age, their bodies are breaking down now with fibromyalgia, gut diseases, because it's your gut chemical. It's the chemicals in your gut that get activated when you're young through trauma. So
Yeah.
if you're a child in a household where anything goes, you don't know what you're coming home to after school, you don't know how dad and mum are going to come through the door and what have you. You are on high alert, and your gut chemicals in your gut are on high alert,
Yeah.
and they become habitual, those gut chemicals, so that when you leave home, you're actually going to look for relationships and situations to
Yeah.
activate those gut chemicals.
Yeah.
And over decades of time, this wears the body down, and then the diseases come on. So I know people my age that are going through counselling now for the first time ever.
Wow.
And I'm so proud of them, because
Hmm.
they will be dead in 10, 20 years if they don't.
Yeah.
I'll be going to their funeral if they don't,
Yeah.
because their health was going downhill. And I won't take a diagnosis. I will not accept a diagnosis if I know that there's been trauma um, in the early childhood that hasn't been looked at.
Hmm.
And because that's disassociating from your own body's experience.
Yeah.
Because the body is telling you, hey, something's wrong here. Now, we've got counsellors everywhere, we've got coaches everywhere. There's no excuse anymore, really. Yes, I know counselling in Australia, it's hard to get an appointment, but there's coaches that have done this work
Yeah.
that can guide you, right? And I've only heard of one or two coaches that have led people up the garden path, but I think that's because those coaches have got into, they're not grounded themselves, those coaches, right?
Well,
So
there's also a lot of coaches aren't actually certified. So you and I are both certified. I've got my master's in coaching, and I
mm,
also have a background in psychology. So uh, yeah, it's making sure your coach has. I know people care about results, but it is important to kind of verify, is like, oh, is this person walking the talk, or
Mm.
or are they just really good at selling, you
That's
know?
right. That's right. And I think because of the internet now, I think we're all a bit of a wake up to who, and scamming. We're a
Mm-hmm.
bit of a wake up to who the car salesmen are out there.
Yeah, yeah.
And the only real thing that I would back is what you do, NLP,
Mm-hmm.
because I've done decades of counseling people where you sit and you tell your story over and over and over and over, which triggers the emotional body, and then we're crying, and there is a time for tears to come up. However, the work I'm doing with Skillful Mind now,
Mm-hmm.
you can meditate, and this will, as the mind slows down, right, regular meditation, as the mind slows down, then the subconscious is able to release, a lot of this programming,
Yeah.
dysfunctional programming, trauma programming of the mind. Okay, so it can be done with meditation, but you also need an NLP practitioner there to be able to reframe
Yes.
uh, what's coming up. So you could probably talk a bit more about that. I haven't done my NLP yet. I'm doing that next year. So
Yeah, it's a fantastic skill. And the way you were saying about counseling, so counseling and therapy is kind of past focused, unpacking the stories. And I think it's important to let people know that our brains, while they are infinitely, infinitely incredible, they're also quite dumb. So they don't know the difference between a real event and a memory. So when you start remembering that traumatic event, all the physiological things that were going on in your body at that time are happening. So if you're ruminating on that, all of that is happening. And that is what breaks down the body and causes illness. So I think coaching is more future focused, and NLP really helps you to just recognize the belief. You don't have to go and revisit all of these old stories that you have. And what we can do is release the belief, rewrite it, and install a brand new belief with NLP. And that is rewiring your brain within a few sessions. And it is fantastic. And it's recommended that you do it kind of on a regular basis just to make sure that it's really cemented in there. But it's so powerful. And I've been using NLP for about 20 years now, and it honestly transformed my own personal trauma stories and helped me to own it and release. And of course, things are still coming up, but this personal development journey is forever. It's constantly unfolding, and you'll be unlearning some things, and then new things will come up, and you're like, okay, let's go, next thing, next thing. And it is a beautiful journey if you allow it to be, and it can bring so much peace and bring such a feeling of lightness as well, which I really, really, really embraced and felt so much gratitude for whenever I was first experiencing it. Even now, I still do. Yeah.
because people mainstream keep very busy with obligations and have
Yes.
to
Hmm.
and obligations. I'm not obligated to anybody, but I know what it was like to be obligated to
Hmm.
people, and it's a pull within, and it is a thought process. I have to do this. I have to. Well, why do you have to? I don't know why I have to. I just know I have to. And also getting to that point. I have a lot of clients that come to me who are caring for another person.
Hmm.
Disability. There's a lot of disability workers out there now,
Hmm.
and a lot of people that have taken on their parents'
Hmm.
aging issues. Yeah, and I sort of think, wow, it's hard enough living one life
Yeah.
rather than living two or
Hmm.
three or four or five, and feeling responsible for other people's lives. I mean, once you can break through that limiting belief, there will be so much freedom. Yes, there will be guilt. Guilt will come, but it's old guilt. It's not new guilt.
Yeah.
It's that gut chemical that I was talking about. And
Hmm.
as we progress, and people will be able to attain to this, that when we start doing new behaviors, new thoughts, yes, there'll be a little bit of guilt, but it's old guilt. and you've only got to change those thoughts and behaviors a couple of times, and then there's no guilt. Then there's
Yeah.
empowerment, and then
Yeah.
there's like, wow, I feel amazing because I just said no.
Yeah.
You know, and I did the boundary courses, you know, that first came out in God, my 30s. I got a little group of women together, you know, and I'd gotten hold of these DVDs, and they were two Christian guys, and they
Mhm.
brought out books about boundaries with children, boundaries in marriage, and you know, and just having boundaries was a mind expansion to me,
Yeah.
because growing up we weren't allowed to say no. You know,
Yeah.
you did what you were told. There was
Mhm.
no boundaries. I mean, Gen Z are really, they got boundaries these days. They'll say no, you know.
Great.
Just
It's great.
it is, I mean, it shocks the boomers, you know,
Yeah.
they just like, oh, kids these days. But I think, you know, we're getting there. As a
Mhm.
collective, we are getting there, but it's going to take each individual, right?
Yes.
And it's up to the individual to get their NLP practicing, get their counseling, you know, to think that you can just walk through this life and get away with it. You got another thing coming. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, in America, they started therapy decades before
Yeah.
Australia, you
Yeah.
know, and so we laughed at them for getting therapy, you know, but now I think everybody needs to be in therapy of some
Mhm.
sort, or some sort of practice, or meditation, most definitely.
Yeah.
You know, that's the top of everything for me, is meditation, because I'm actually watching people who have started meditating daily, and what NLP will bring out, or a counselor would bring out, is coming up.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm watching a doctor question becoming a doctor,
Mhm.
and that blows my mind, because that is a purification.
Yeah.
Because maybe, you know, how many people went and did jobs because their parents told them that's what they had to do,
Yeah.
and they never questioned it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They never
Just
questioned it.
a wee note on the have tos. A while ago I was saying that, and I just noticed the energy around it just felt shit. So I changed it to I choose to, and then gave myself reasons why, and that just made everything so much lighter, and it just made it so much easier. Just so, in case anybody out there is saying a lot of I have tos, if you change it
Mm,
to I choose to, you'll feel so much better about whatever it is that you're going to be doing.
mm.
So finally, Monique, as someone who has been an absolute pioneer, what do you see as the future of this movement, this spirituality movement,
Individuality. It has to
individuality?
be, because for the collective to change, it's going to be each individual,
Yeah.
and that's all over the internet. You know, no one's going to save you. The government aren't your mummy and daddy. Blah blah blah. It's you getting responsible for you
Hmm.
individually, owning it, being okay with it, because we all have a conscience. You know,
Hmm.
we all have a conscience. We all love love. We all want to love. We all want
Yeah.
to prosper.
Yeah.
You know, that's just common. We all want to feel part of a loving group.
Hmm.
You know, these are natural human species desires.
Hmm.
So, you know, it's it's going to take an individual, right? A
Yeah.
human, a collective of individuals that are
Yeah.
true to themselves, and not coming under another person's power,
Okay. Yeah. That's a yeah. I
with
would totally
wisdom,
agree with that. You
with
need to
wisdom, of course, with
you need to
wisdom.
budge up in that lonely boat.
Yes, yes,
Makes
but you're
sense to
not
me.
alone. You're
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
alone. That's the whole
Yeah.
thing. You're never ever alone.
Yeah.
And once you know, as you go further on that journey, then you start connecting with that part of yourself that is source. That,
Hmm.
that Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks channels, you know, that is source. Because this is a meat suit. And when
Yeah.
we leave, what leaves with us is that part through the veil,
Hmm.
whence we came from. And that's
Yeah.
the God spark of ourselves. And you'll
Mhm.
also see, in the movement, I am God. I am God, because there's a part of me that keeps me alive that is the God source part.
Mhm.
And when you can connect with that through meditation, most definitely, you become the watcher,
Yeah.
the
Yes.
observer within, and the ego sits down, the ego settles down,
Mhm.
and you are observing. And then that's when
Absolutely.
they talk about not having preferences and judgments and what have you.
Yeah.
But you can get there. I've done it. Many have done it before me,
Mhm.
where you have peace and nothing's bothering you anymore.
Mhm.
It can be
That's great.
done. So am
That's
I
great.
allowed to put some links in the comments?
Yes, of
Yes.
course. I was
Okay.
just about to ask
Uh-huh.
if somebody wants to work with you or Skillful Mind, where would you like me to direct them?
Well, I've got my website, which
Mhm.
is Intuitive Soul Savant, and that is for me looking at your blueprint and your, because there's going to be a lot of people challenged by this awakening.
Mhm.
So I can guide people along that way, but also the meditation. We do a meditation leaders course, which you can become a meditation teacher, because,
Mhm.
they always say in coaching, teach what you want to learn.
Mhm.
Okay. You can start with a couple of students, or this course will also teach you how to meditate.
Mhm.
Okay. And then we also have a 2-year mentoring program where you are in a small group and we are studying from the book called The Mind Illuminated.
Okay.
And, 7 years meditating, I've meditated for decades, but if you started as a beginner, 7 years and you're enlightened, like the
Mhm.
Buddha, if you follow this map.
Mhm.
Okay. Because it is a neurologist and a meditator. Shuddhasa is his
Okay.
ordained name.
Mhm.
Um, he's written a path, a map. Okay, so you don't have to get caught up in the religion of Buddhism and all the books and what have you. Right? It's meditating and understanding the mind, and you're illuminating the mind, because
Mhm.
meditation isn't just sitting there and going blank, because
Mhm.
that's dulling the mind, and we need an alert, aware, awakened mind.
Mhm.
Mm.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining me today. That was an amazing chat.
Oh, I love it. Anytime.
Thank you so much.
In this episode, we delve deep into the world of spirituality, astrology, and manifestation with the insightful Monique Hill. Remember that the power to create your reality lies within you. Embrace your individuality, trust your intuition, and believe in the limitless potential of your spirit. Join our fabulous community of High Vibe Manifestors in the High Vibe Manifestation Tribe on Facebook, and discover the transformative power of self-discovery and spiritual growth if you're in Australia and New Zealand. Subscribe to the High Vibe Healers Hangout on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or even YouTube for more inspiring content. And be sure to subscribe, comment, like, do all the things that help us grow, and leave us a review if you're listening on podcast channels.